Hey everybody, Sam Webb here, and I'm back with part 2 of my Shopify Theme Build series. Today we're going to build a simple hero component for the homepage. We're going to build it in a way that will allow us to reuse a majority of the code in the future if we need to. A bit of a disclaimer, I'm going to use background images for this feature simply because it's easier to work with. Other options would be multiple image elements for mobile and desktop, one image element using source set property, or the picture element with multiple source elements. All these are viable strategies, and depending on your needs, you could go with any of these, but today we're going to use background. So let's get started. Before we start building anything, there's a few housekeeping things we need to take care of. So the first thing is we need to add get, and we can do that easily by adding get init. And so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to say get add, and I just put dot for all. That's going to add everything, and I'm going to put GST. It's going to show me everything that's staged for commit. Get commit -m for message, because you have to give your commit messages or your commits need a message. And I'll just call this initial commit. Clear that. And now we're ready to start building. So the first thing I want to do, something I haven't added to this workflow, but will be coming in a future update. If you go into source and you go into liquid and templates and index, usually you would want this tag to be in here. Right, content for index, which is what allows you to use dynamic sections on the home page. And this is just something that I forgot to put in when I was initially building this workflow. So if you're using this in the future, it should have this, but I would just check this file just in case you grabbed it before the update was made. So next we can close that out. We're not going to need this file anymore, and shrink down templates just so you don't have to see all those files. And we're going to be creating 3 files. So we're going to have a section, a snippet, and we're going to have some CSS to go along with that. So let me create those files now in sections. I'm going to make a new file, hero.liquid. In snippets, we're going to do the same thing, a new file, hero.liquid. And then in styles, in components, we're going to add a file, _hero.scss. And then within theme.scss, we're going to replace this example with hero. Save that. And we can keep open hero, but we don't need theme anymore. And so these are the 3 files we're going to be working in. So to start us off, I'm going to go into hero.liquid, and I'm going to say render hero. And what this is going to do, it's going to pull in this hero snippet into this file. And then what I'm going to do to start off is I'm going to build everything in hero, and then I'm going to move it over, or I'm going to build everything in the snippet, and I'm going to move it over to the hero and make it editable. So let's start out with a section tag with a class of hero. And we're only going to need a few things in this. We're going to have an image, which is going to be the background. We're going to have heading text. We're going to have some extra paragraph text after that, and we're going to have a button, or what you'll hear in the industry called a CTA, or call to action, which is a button that's going to either take you somewhere or do some sort of action. And so let's add all those things. So let's add H2. And this is going to say heading. We're going to add a P tag. And some text here. And the last thing is we're going to add a button. So This is going to be a link to another page. So in this case, we're going to use an A tag or anchor tag. If it were going to be a button that someone could click and it would cause some sort of action on the page, maybe it moves you down the page, you'd want to use a button tag here. But instead, since we're linking off the page, we're going to use an A tag. A href is going to be, for now, it's just going to be a hash, and then class on that as well, and hero link. And we're going to say click here. I'm going to save that. And then, and so right now, you're not going to be able to see anything because this isn't showing on any pages. So we're going to hop into hero really quickly in sections, and we're going to make this a dynamic section. So schema and what the schema tag is, it only goes in sections, and what this tag does is it's the place where you can add editable content for the page. Basically, everything you put in here will show up in the theme editor when you're looking at this section. It also has a place for something called presets. I'm not going to get into everything that presets can do, but the primary thing that presets is going to do for us, it's going to turn this into a dynamic section, which means it will automatically show up on the home page as an option in the theme editor. And so let's get started here. Name is going to be hero, and settings. And for now, I'm going to leave that as I'm actually going to add something here just to make sure that it'll upload properly. Type header content hero. And then we need to add presets. Which can be name. So we need name, and we need we're going to need kind of the type or the category that it falls under. And we're just going to call this image with text. And I'm going to save that. And I'm going to do a yarn deploy. And that's going to deploy this code to my site. So if we come back over to Band Basic, we hop into Customize, and we refresh the page, you'll see that we have this add section here. And if I click add section, you'll see we've got a category, image with text, and under that we have one section, which is hero. So we click that, click add, and it's going to add it to the page, right? So we've got heading as a H2, some text as a paragraph, and click here as a button. I'm going to save that. And then go back over to our code. So at this point, we know that our snippet works. We know that our snippet's connected to our section. We know that our section works, but we don't necessarily know yet that our CSS works. So let's just double check that and say .hero, background color, red, save that, do another yarn deploy. Come back over here, refresh the page, and now you can see that the background color of that section is red. Now at this point, there's something that's becoming pretty apparent, and that's that we constantly have to do a yarn deploy, which is a bit tedious and it's a bit inefficient. So there are other commands with this workflow. One of them is called yarn watch, and one of them is called yarn deploy, or excuse me, yarn start. And so what yarn start will do is it will do the build, it will do the deploy, and then it will run what's called a watcher, and it will watch our code. And so anytime there are any changes, it will automatically upload them to the theme that we're working on, so we don't constantly have to do this yarn build. So let's do that. Yarn start. And you see it automatically opens up our theme. We don't need this because we already have it open here. So let me refresh the page on this one. And now, if I change the background color to blue and save, you'll see it uploading down here, processes it, and then uploads it. And then if I come back over to the site and refresh the page, now the background is blue. So at this point, we've got our text, we've got our CSS, we've got our button, and now we're missing the background image. But instead of doing that hard-coded in the snippet, this is where we're going to switch over and we're going to start using this section for all of the data that we're going to use. So if I hop into this section, instead of just calling the hero by itself, you can actually call snippets with arguments. And so I'm going to type with, and we're going to, and you don't have to use this with and curly braces method. There are a few different ways of passing arguments. This is just kind of, in my opinion, the most readable and easiest to maintain. And so we're going to want to pass the settings of this section into the hero so that we can use them within there. And so we're just going to say settings equals section.settings. And then inside of hero, I like to add a comment. Inside of any snippet that takes arguments, I like to add a comment that at least tells you what the arguments are that this snippet can accept. And so we named it settings, so let's copy that. And we'll say requires the following args. Let's just spell it out. Arguments, and put settings here. And I would advise that you kind of give a bit of an explanation to what settings is, maybe put a colon here and give a bit of an explanation, but we're not going to do that here. Now this is something that's important when it comes to a lot of these things. You're gonna have planned this ahead, or you're already gonna know that's gonna require text. So thinking about the names and knowing what you're gonna be naming things ahead of time is useful. So in this scenario, I already know that I'm gonna use the word heading for the name of this. I'm gonna use copy for this, and I'm gonna use for these two things, URL link and URL text or something like that, right? So in here, I'm going to say settings dot heading. I'm going to say settings dot body. Settings dot URL. And settings dot say link text. Let's call this link URL because it's being used on the link tag. And that's been updated. Now if we go back, we're going to see that everything, all the text has gone away. If I refresh the page, we lose that text. And so we're going to need to get that text, right? So we've lost the height of this because there's no text within it. That's why there's also no background color. So we're going to need to add that text. So we can add some new settings. I'm going to get rid of this setting and type text ID heading label heading and default. I'm going to call it new heading. It's going to be the default text that goes in here. I'm going to save that. And then I'm going to hop back in here. As you can see now, we've got new heading there. Let me just get rid of that blue background color. Refresh the page. Now we've got new heading. And I need to do that for the rest. So we need body next. Type. Again, this time we're going to say text area. ID, copy, label, body copy. And default. And let's go to, we're not going to need this page. So let's go to, where is it? Hipsum. And click Beer Me and grab this first little piece of a paragraph. And then paste that here. The next thing we're going to need is the URL. Label. And finally, the link text. Right, all that should be updated. If we hit, let's just make sure everything's correct. Settings, copy. And then now our copy is showing up. Now you might notice that the button still isn't, or the link still isn't displaying, and that's because we haven't added anything in settings for that. So let's come back here. Let's hop back into this hero and refresh the page. So we need a link. Actually, before we do that, I'm going to add some default text to the link. And refresh this again. The link should display now. And then we're going to add a URL to a product page, maybe the joggers. All right, let me refresh this page first so that it has the new defaults. Yeah, there we go. Product, the jogger, save. And that link will take us to the jogger page. Now, right now, that page isn't built, so we're not going to click it. And so now we need to add the background image. And this is where it's going to get a little bit more. So a lot of that stuff was some of the simpler stuff. Kind of here's the anatomy of a section and a type. So each item in a section, a type is required. And for most types, except for like a paragraph or the first one that I had in here, header, those don't require the rest of these. Those require a content attribute. But for all the normal ones, the things that display something, you need type, ID, and label as are always required. And then depending on the type you choose, you have access to different ones, or you're required to use different ones. And so if we go to configure theme settings, another Shopify documentation page, this will tell you all about that. Everything that you can use. This tells you about how type is required, ID is required, label is required, and then default is usually available. Info is if you want to give more information on a specific one. And then here are the basic types. So you saw me use text and text area so far. And you also saw, if we go down to some of the more, some of the specialized ones, you also saw us use URL. And so depending on which of these types you use, if I click URL, it'll tell you which inputs you can use with it, and so I'll link this in the description as well. So going back to this, now we need an image. So another one of those. Let's hop back into this one more time. Image picker. So image picker is what we're going to use next, and it allows a merchant to use images, and basically when they upload an image using the image picker, it's going to store it in their files folder, which is in the Shopify admin, and then they'll either be able to choose an image from there or upload a new one, and I'll show you all that when we get there. So we're gonna need two images. We're gonna need a kind of mobile style image and a desktop styled image. And what I mean by that is we're gonna have a kind of short in height and wide image for desktop, and probably a square image for mobile devices. And so image picker for the type, label for ID, it's going to be small image label, and then I'm going to add info here. And usually what I would suggest is for you to add the dimensions. And so let's say dimensions 767 by 767, right? Because I'm going to use the same image, all the way up to on tablets, like right to the edge of tablets. And so 768, let's actually change it, 768 by 768. That's where we want the image to be at least that large. And then actually let's call it 991. Type again, image picker. Label. And I'm not going to add dimensions to this one. It's going to be whatever you've designed or you feel like your dimensions should be. That's what you would add here. But in this case, I'm not too concerned about that. So I'm going to save that. Then I'm going to hop back into our settings, refresh the page, hop back into Hero, and now we've got two images. So I'm just going to select two of these images that I already have stored here. So I'm going to grab this one. And it's not a square image, but that's fine. This is just for testing purposes. And save that. And right now you're not going to see any changes, right? Because we haven't added those images to the code. We've just made it to where you're able to select those images. So the next step is to actually add those. And as I mentioned, I'm going to be using background images in this. And so within this snippet, let's add a style tag. And then let's say out here, let's add another field called ID, right? And we want to pass in the section ID. And the reason we want that is because we want to make sure that when we set this background, we're setting it on this specific, on a specific instance of this hero, right? Because if we go back here, we can add more heroes to the page. And we can add as many as we want. And so we don't want to accidentally override all the preceding sections with the settings of the last one, right? So we want, or at least with the images of the last one. So we want the section ID because these are each going to have their own unique ID. And what we're going to do here is we're going to say hero dash dash ID. And let me just add that here as well. Save. And before I do anything, I just want to show you what that's going to look like. So let's refresh the page and look at this. And in the code, as you see here, we've got hero, and then we've got hero dash dash and this kind of random assortment of numbers, which that's the ID. And so that's going to give us a place to target when we do this this CSS here. When I say dot hero dash dash ID, and then I could say background image, and that's going to be, let's see, I think they're called small image. So URL, it's like that, and then section or settings dot URL, or let me fix that in a minute. Settings at small image. And for now, I'm going to do image URL of master. And we're going to do the same thing for a large image. We're going to say at, if I can remember, media, min width 92 pixels. Background image, again, URL. And we're going to do settings large image. Master. Now, right now, I'm using master just to pull the raw image, the image at its normal size, whatever size was uploaded. In your scenario, you might actually want to be a little bit more picky with the size of image, just to make sure that you're not pulling in an overly sized image for a small device, right? So if we look at this, we're pulling in at least, assuming that I uploaded a 992 sized image or a 991 sized image for the mobile one. We're pulling that size image in even when somebody on an iPhone opens their phone, and that's sitting at about 375, I believe, pixels. So it's oversized image. And so what we could do to remedy that, and you're probably going to add a few more of these, but I'm going to say at media min width, let's say 600 px, and background image URL again, and this time I'm going to say settings that small image. Hey, before this next part, I just wanted to hop in here really quickly with a quick fix. I noticed that I was doing the 600 sized image down here, and what you really want is you want your default image to be at size 600, and then once you've hit 600 pixels, you want to grab the larger image. So what you're going to see is I'm down here typing 600 when I should be up here. And I just wanted to hop in really quickly and correct that. All right, back to the video. We're going to add image URL, right? But instead of pulling such a large image, the 900 version, let's pull this a version of this image at 600. So we can say 600x. And that's going to say pull the image at a width of 600 and adjust the height to have the same aspect ratio that it would have had otherwise. So in this case, if somebody uploaded a square image, it would still give you back a 600 by 600 image because it's going to keep the same aspect ratio. It's just shrinking the image size down. And I'm not going to add any more of these media queries for this. I think this is fine for demonstration purposes. And if we go back to the site, you'll see we've got one background image at this size. And as I'm moving this around, let me double check my code here. Here's the problem. So at the moment I'm used to using Sass, and so this is normal CSS, so we need to still wrap this in its usual elements. Refresh the page. Let's refresh that one more time just to make sure. Yeah, there we go. So now we've got the red image on a larger one, and then as we go down, we've got that different background image, right? And so the last step is to make sure that everything looks good. Hey, I just wanted to hop in here really quickly and explain the upcoming cut that you're going to see. I decided to cut out all of the CSS just because a lot of it's really basic CSS, and it made the video much longer than it needed to be. And so to keep this video short, I decided to cut all that out. And in the upcoming segment, I'll be explaining some of the changes that I made. So let's get back to the video. All right, welcome back. Now, as you see, I've made a few changes to the style of this, and I just want to go over some of those changes that I made. So first, let's hop over here and look at it on a full screen and then inspect. And as we get to the smaller screen, you see that it changes, and then as we get smaller, the size changes, right? To accommodate for mobile devices so it doesn't stick off the screen. We've also got a bit of a hover state here. So when you hover over this button, it almost reverses color to the background's a little bit of a lighter black than what the text is. And now I want to go over what I added. So the first thing is going to be the font selection. So I added Montserrat as a font, so you can go to Google Fonts, you can look up Montserrat, and then I chose regular 400, medium 500, and bold 700. You can copy this link over here, and if you go back to your code in theme.liquid, you can just add it right there. And then from there, you're able to use the Montserrat font within your store. So we close that. In the snippets hero file, I added this wrapper around it called hero content that wraps all the content. And then I added overlay. And if we go back to the front end, you can see that the image is a bit darker than it was before. And that's because I have this overlay. And I'll show you that CSS in a minute. We've got theme.css. So as I mentioned earlier, I was going to remove some of those global styles like the box sizing and the body changes. And so if you can see that we've got along with the hero component, we've also got these two other imports for variables and global. If we look over here, we'll see that we've got a global file, and those two files are sitting in there. Variables has the font stack, which is Montserrat, sans serif, and then those three font weights that I requested. Then in global, we've got some of those updates. We set that primary font stack, so we set the font family to Montserrat, and then just some other kind of global changes, some little resets. And then in Hero, you can see we've added a bunch of different styles. So we've made it a flex item. The entire hero is a flex item, and everything is vertically centered within there. There's some different padding and stuff. We've got the styles for that overlay. So overlay is positioned to absolute, and then it's taken up 100%, and then it's just kind of a transparent black. That hero content, we've positioned that relative just so that it can compete with the overlay in terms of z-index. And then we've added a bunch of styles to the text and to the button. So those are the changes, and that's how we got this new look here. Now earlier I mentioned that this is what's called a dynamic section. And dynamic sections are something that at the time of this video are only available on the home page. In the future, Shopify plans to release something called sections everywhere, which should give you this functionality or kind of a similar version of this functionality on all pages. But at the moment, it's only available on the home page. And what a dynamic section is that when we write this code here in this section, what we're doing is we're building, you can consider it a kind of a component template, right? So a hero will have all of these things that you can adjust on it, and it will import this snippet and it will be built in this way. And so it's just a template of how this will be laid out. And so what we can do because of that is within here we're able to add as many of these heroes as we want. And so we add another section, we hit hero again, click add, and now we have 2 heroes on the page. And so I'll just give this a background image. Hit save. If I ever come refresh this page, now we've got that. Now we've got the same kind of layout, but different content, right? And that's what a dynamic section is, right? The section itself is just the layout of how you can place content, and then you make these different instances of that section, and you can populate them all with different content. The last thing I want to show you is that when you build a section, it's not set in stone, right? If I'm going to have a bunch of these sections on the page, I don't want them all to be laid out exactly the same way, right? It's the template is a general layout and it gives you kind of options for what you can have and hide and things. And if I'm going to have a bunch of these laid out on the page next to each other, I don't want them all to be, text left align. That's basically the main difference. Text left align. I don't necessarily want them all to always have the same text color. I might want some different colors. And so I'm gonna go back into the code, and I'm just gonna add one setting that's gonna be the alignment. So this is going to be of type select. Label is going to be alignment. ID is going to be alignment. Default is going to be left. And then we're going to have options, which is an array of objects. And we're going to have 2 alignments, right? We're going to have left alignment, which is going to be the default, and we're going to have center alignment. I think it's label, left, and value, left. We're going to do another one of these, label, center, value, center. Save that. See that uploaded, so there shouldn't be any errors. So I'm going to refresh the page. I'm going to choose the second one, and I'm going to change the center alignment. Right? I'm going to save that. And I'm going to hop back over into the snippet. And we're going to add a class to. Let's add this class to content. We'll say hero, content, and double dash. Then we're going to say alignment. Save. We're going to want to look at this on the front end, refresh the page. Refresh it one more time just to make sure. Inspect this element. If we come in here, we'll see that this one has hero content center, whereas this one has hero content left. And then I'm going to hop into hero, find hero content. I'm going to say and dash dash center, text line center. Refresh that. As you can see, now we have this one that's left aligned, this one that's center aligned. And we can do that with a bunch of different things, right? I mentioned the text color, we could do the overlay color, and there are so many things that we can add to sections to kind of give them a bunch of different options and a bunch of different feels for if you want to do different things with the same section. And this is just one of those examples. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.